Chapter 24, Mishnah 5. We may annul vows, that is, a husband may annul his wife's vows, and a father may annul his daughter's vows on Shabbos. A man may annul his wife's or daughter's vow only on the day he hears of it. Thus, if he hears of the vow on Shabbos, he can annul it only on Shabbos itself until sunset. Therefore, the sages permitted annulling vows on Shabbos, even if the vows do not prohibit anything necessary for Shabbos. Since after Shabbos they can no longer annul the vow, annulling it on Shabbos is not considered an unnecessary exertion. And we may ask an expert or a court of 3 laymen to release us from vows made to abstain from things that are necessary for Shabbos. Unlike annulling a vow, which must be performed on the day the vow was first heard, asking for release from a vow has no time limit. One may therefore seek release from a vow on Shabbos only if it is necessary for the sake of Shabbos. Otherwise, it is prohibited because it is an unnecessary exertion on Shabbos. We may temporarily shutter a window on Shabbos with a board that is not attached to it. Since the board is being added only temporarily to the structure, it does not appear like the malacha of building. And we may measure a rag to determine whether it is large enough to transmit tuma. We may also measure a mikvah to determine whether it is large enough to be a valid mikvah. Although usually the act of measuring is rabbinically prohibited on Shabbos because it resembles a weekday activity, the rabbis allowed it for the purpose of a mitzvah. Since the measurement in these cases are needed to determine the legal status of the rag and the mikvah, they are considered measurements for a mitzvah. The Mishnah relates a story to prove 2 of the above rulings. There was a story in the days of Rabbi Tzadok's father and Abba Shaul ben Batnis. There were 2 houses with a narrow alley between them. Their 2 roofs were connected by a barrel that reached over the alley from one house to the other. In one of these houses, a man lay dying. As a result, the residents of the second house were worried that when he died, tuma would spread through a window of his house into the alley, and from there through a window into their house. To prevent tuma from entering the second house, its residents shuttered the window in their house that faced the alley with an earthenware container. However, this might not have been necessary because the barrel that connected the 2 roofs had a gap of unknown size in it. If it was larger than a tefach, then the tuma would be unable to travel past the gap. Therefore, after plugging the window, the residents attempted to check the size of the gap to see if they could safely remove the earthenware container from their window. So they measured an earthenware vessel to see that its width was exactly a tefach wide. And after doing so, they tied it to a stick with a strand of reed grass, and thus thrust it upward to see if the vessel would fit through the gap in the barrel. This would determine whether or not the gap in the barrel that was overhanging the alley was a tefach wide. From this story we learn that one may do the following 3 things on Shabbos. 1. One may temporarily shutter a window, as they did with the earthenware container in the window of the second house. 2. One may measure to determine legal status or to perform some other mitzvah, as they did with the tefach wide vessel. And 3. And one may tie a temporary knot, as they did with reed grass.